Good evening, TiE members, delegates, speakers, honored invitees, and all participants here. It's my privilege to talk to you a little bit about a company we started right in Kerala, in Trivandrum, exactly 20 years ago. A little bit about what actually happened. And the story of the journey over 2 decades. A story maybe some of you might have heard and some of you may not have heard. I don't have PowerPoint presentations, so I'm just going to talk extempore. I hope the stories, in olden days, the wisdom of the generations were passed to each other through stories that people would tell. If you look at the history of Kerala, we've always had something to give to the world. For thousands of years, we had our spices that the world came beating to our door for. We created Ayurveda, we created Kalaripayata, all related to the body that we exported around the world and health. That was Kerala's export. The next generation, the last century, saw us exporting people. So we exported hands for labor. As a result, perhaps 50% of all men in Kerala are employed somewhere else outside Kerala. I guess we have about $35 to $50 billion of foreign income that we earn every year out of this. But about 2 decades ago, we thought, what if we can now work with our heads and export intellect? And that's the story that I want to tell today. Whenever we talk about a journey, the story of any company, the first question you always ask is, how did you start? So a little bit about how we started UST. Interestingly, we didn't have a plan. I'm sure a lot of the mentors in startup ventures would tell you, you have to have a business plan, you have to have a strategy. We had a dream. We didn't have a plan. And the dream was to build something out of Kerala that can change. Wanted to build the first billion-dollar firm in technology out of Kerala. That was the dream. We did not know exactly how we were going to do that. So, late in 1998, I had a personal tragedy that I met with. My brother passed away in a car accident. So I was in the United States working for large telcos and had started up another company along with my friend. And I decided to leave that and come and settle in Kerala. So I came to Technopark and looked for opportunities. So I met with a few CEOs in India and said, we're going to set up this company here, and you need to help me by entering a partnership. Because one thing I don't have is I don't have the ability to market because I'll be here. So I met Mr. Vijayaraghavan here, and he was the CEO of the Technopark at the time. He said, after my visit to Technopark, he called me that evening and said, you should talk to a man called Mr. G. M. Menon. I said, okay, that's interesting, but I went back. About a week later, I got a call from Mr. G. M. Menon. He called me and said, we need to talk. And I was in Chicago. I said, sure, I'd like to talk to you. And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm in Chicago. And he said, that's a good day. Today is a good day for us to talk. I said, sure, you can talk on the phone. And he said, no, I want to see you. I said, well, I'm in Chicago, you're in LA. He said, yeah, there is always a flight. So I paused and I said, is he really asking me to fly that day? He said, yes. So I got on a flight at about 2 o'clock. I got to the LAX airport. At that time, you can come to the very gate, front of the gate. And he said, why don't you come and tell me your story? We sat down right in front of the gate. We talked for 4.5 hours, had several cups of coffee, and a lot of conversation. He told me his stories about how he started and built firms around the world. And he said, I told him my idea. And he said, you got to join us. We think we can do this in Kerala. And that was the first time, frankly, 20 years ago, anybody, anywhere, told me that something can be done out of Kerala to me directly. Interestingly, every person I had met before and after told me why it's a dumb idea to do it in Kerala. In fact, after we started, many of you might have experienced it yourself, said, this is a really stupid idea to start in Kerala. This is a certain way to ruin. This, you are going to fail. You see, our philosophy was very simple. 30 million people, roughly 5 times the size of Israel, a culture that has created magnificent contributions to the world that very often we forget. Why not do something like this in Kerala? Nobody could tell us exactly why we shouldn't do it. You see, the first motto of a startup, as Steve Jobs famously said, stay hungry, stay foolish. We didn't start to become a small company. The very first day, we had 14 employees in a small conference room. We said, we are going to be a $1 billion firm in 10 years. Well, it took us a little bit more than that, but that was the very first thing we said. And said, we're going to do this. We had no money. The venture capital did not exist in Kerala at the time, as you know. In fact, it was almost practically impossible to get money. So we said, listen, there are credit cards and there are mortgages, and there are salaries that you can cut. If you assemble a few people together, at some point something will come. The interesting thing about the difference between a dream and a plan is, now I have to quote Mike Tyson, all strategies and plans go out of the window the first time you get to the boxing ring and get hit in the face. Until then, you got all strategies. Startups are exactly that way. So here is my hit in the face. Before we launched the company in the spring of '99, we had closed our first customer. We went to a retailer, convinced them that we should be the one that they should do business with. It's a big retailer, Gap stores. Our competitor was Capgemini, Ernst & Young at the time. So we displaced them, and we wrote a contract before the company was started. So one of the morals of the story is, if you can get a customer before even you start, which is not easy, but if you do, you have a winning game. Well, I flew down. This was June, July of 1999. There was no company. We came here. We put ads in the newspaper, took a small space in Technopark, interviewed over 1,000 people, and selected 28 people, out of which 14 came. That was it. We said, we're going to hire the next few hundred people, and we're going to do this big stuff for Gap stores. I land in LA after this, spending the money out of the pocket, whatever we had. In LA, when I landed, I had voicemails left. At those times when you travel to the US, you can't access your voicemails. So a bunch of voicemails popped up. So my voicemail said, please call me urgently from Gap store. So my thinking was, see, he's going to give me more work. This is fantastic. So as soon as I got a chance in the car, I called him. So he said, listen, how are things going? I said, yeah, we got everything started. We're ready to go. He said, before that, I want to tell you something. Listen, I knew that you are the right company, but my executive staff, my CFO, is very uncomfortable that I have engaged with a company that we haven't worked with us. While you are the top player, for this particular initiative, I'm afraid I can't use you. And ladies and gentlemen, that was our start. We have hundreds of people on payroll, no company, no customer, no money in the bank. And we said, well, when life handles you lemon, you have to make lemon juice with it, right? So that was how we started. This is 99 September. So the next question, before that, I want to tell you another thing about startups. So a few months later, we have been calling everybody, and at that time a company said, we are going to come and, we called a company called Remedy Software. It's a fast-rising software. And the executive vice president who was on the phone got so excited after the phone call, he said, we're going to come and see you. Well, there's only one problem with that. We didn't have an office. We were in our house garage. I couldn't possibly have him come to California and see us because there wasn't an office. So I called Mr. Menon that evening and said, listen, here's what happened. This major customer is coming. It's a break. However, I don't have any offices. He said, I'm sure you'll find a solution. I said, I got exactly 2 days. I can build an office in 2 days. He said, Sajan, just think. And he puts down the phone. So I said, I don't know what he's talking about because he's going to be here. Anyways, so about an hour later, I called him and said, Mr. Menon, you have another company here called MagnaComp. We would like to host a customer there. All you need to do is to change the signs and make it USD Global for a day. And he said, are you crazy? It's a public company. I told him, listen, give me a shot. He calls the CEO up, and they finally decided to give me this opportunity, except you have to come through the back door, and he will change the signs in the back. In the front, you can't change it. I said, I'll take whatever I can get. So the customer comes 2 days later. I have a team of about 6 people in the room. We had a fantastic discussion, and he was so impressed that he said, we're going to sign this deal. So we have an assistant, we have a sign, everything. And he leaves the room. He says, this is fantastic. So we were all happy. And we saw him go away. We were celebrating, high-fiving, very, very happy, that the customer had a great deal. And we were pulling the signs down. Everything is coming down. And we suddenly hear a knock on the door. And he opens. He is back. And he forgot his bag. So he came back for his bag. So he looked around, and I think the realization dawned on him. Anyway, long story, he said, he didn't say anything. He took the bag, he started walking. So I walked behind him, and he just kept shaking his head. I kid you not, he gets in his car. I said, Mr. So-and-so, he doesn't say anything. He drives away by shaking his head. About 2 days later, I call him. Clearly, after several attempts, he picks up the phone. I said, listen, I would like to ask you for a chance. So he was very quiet for it seemed to me like 5 minutes. And he says, I can't believe that you pulled this off. You got to have something in this company. I am going to sign that contract. So as luck would have it, that one shot, was the beginning of USD. The next question, as I said, it's the funding process. We didn't have any funding, we didn't have any source. I'm going to tell you the story about how important customer is. 2000 mid. I think 2000, those of you who are in financial, you should know, we were burning closely $600,000 to $1 million a year. We were losing. Because we had hired a lot of people, infrastructure, and the market demand was not adding up. And you remember the dot-com bust? That had happened. So we were in deep trouble. We hadn't paid salaries. Seriously, at the time, as a startup, we couldn't afford it. We were struggling. There was no end in sight. So one day I said, there is no way we can take this company forward. Every day I will go back to bed thinking, there is one more day. If I can survive one more day, perhaps something will happen. So this is what happened. So one day I said, there is no more chance. Tomorrow I gotta give up. This is it. That day, interestingly, I went and met with a customer, a small little customer, heavily funded, called eClub Buy. The CEO and the chairman is a lady who's a very, very successful entrepreneur. Fortunately, that day, she couldn't meet me in the office, so she took me to her house. So we had a very relaxed, informal meeting. The meeting went on for quite a while. She was sharing me with her plans, et cetera, et cetera. And we had a great meeting. She said, listen, I'm so interested, I want to start the work. After the meeting, I went back home. But I know when I come back, the decision is going to be pretty traumatic. So I said, maybe, again, I'll apply the same principle. If I go to sleep today, maybe tomorrow something will change. So the next morning, I'm calling everybody and getting them ready for the event. At 10 o'clock, I get a knock on the door. So there's a person at my house giving me an envelope. Then the envelope, there is a signed contract, and there's a check for $250,000. So I looked at it, I said, in my mind thinking, should I deposit this? Or should I call her, right? It's extreme pressure. I said, I can't deposit it, I should call her, because no way, she made a mistake. So I called her. She picked up the phone, I said, listen, Beth, I have this $250,000 of check here. She says, yes, I know, I signed the check. I said, okay. She said, that's my deposit for starting this. Anyway, she said, listen, yesterday I knew you needed this money. I was quiet. She said, I think I will get this multiple times in return. You will do right by me. That $250,000 check was the best funding source I've ever had. So again, we went there and then closed closed with the family office out of Geneva. And it was that simple, that close. The third point to think about is, in all this business, how do you grow and how do you scale? And this is very important. When you grow and scale, one of the most important things is to have a culture. You have to develop a global culture. You can groom in Kerala, groom locally, but you have to bloom globally. If you forget that, you will remain a local company. Every place we work, we intended to make a difference. We wanted to leave something wherever we worked in the sands of time. A little bit of example is a program called Step It Up America. We initiated a few years ago. This was our proposition. We will go and train minority women in inner cities of America and give them jobs in USD. After training them for free for 4 months, we'll compress a computer science degree into 90 teaching days. We figured that out and launched this program. And I just want you to listen to this video, the story of how this impacted the United States. Many of the people think we as Indian companies take away. We wanted to give something back to the place that feeds us. So if you can play the video.
I was asked to share my story with you all, and I will be glad to do that because I believe in inspiring others. I'm 31 years old and a mother of 3, a single mother. Unfortunately, a mother's worst nightmare happened to me. I lost all of my children 5 years ago in a tragic accident. And their ages were 8, 3, and 1. My daughter, she was 8 years old, her name was Jordan. My sons were Corey and Cameron, 3 and 1. They were my life. I was a teenage mother, so everything stopped when I had them. My responsibility was to take care of them and make sure their goals and dreams were met. So everything stopped for them. When they passed away, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. But my faith, my courage, and my strength, and my family, and also a community, and just the fact of knowing that they're still watching me is what made me push on. I could have given up that night. I could have let it go. I could have moved into drugs. I could have thought of ending my own life at times. I could have done all of that, but I didn't, because I believe in second chances. And UST Global is a second chance. With Step It Up America, a program that's going to actually train me and help me deal with issues if I can't, go on with them. A company that's willing to just sit down with me and say, hey, you don't get it? Don't worry about it. We'll help you get it. A company with integrity, loyalty, and stability and longevity, and a goal and a future. Technology is the future, period.
The president is determined to make sure we have the best trained workers. Secretary said, we can't train and pray. We got to train and place. Train and place. That's what you're doing here. I want to personally thank everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A little bit of the final note. It is good to grow and it's good to execute, good to have the entrepreneurship, but you always need to know when to exit as companies and leaders. So we should know how to lead the company so that it can grow towards a better future. And the companies should not be dependent on a few people or a few leaders or one leader. And a part of growing a company to that level is the fact that you can leave something that can stand the test of time and can be testament to the fact that we can truly build something magnificent in Kerala. For that message, the next innings, we are launching a fund called Season 2 Ventures. It's a $100 million fund dedicated for startups in Kerala and India, for B2B ventures, and it will focus on 4 sectors: in healthcare, in retail, in banking and fintech, and in energy tech. So in the next few weeks, next few months, we have a team here. So my point is simply this: why should it only be one unicorn? Why not 10? Let the flowers bloom. Thank you very much.